Welcome to Talking Technology with VI Labs. At VI Labs, we believe technology is the single greatest enabler for people with sight loss and all disabilities. If you're looking for the latest news and conversation on tech from a more accessible perspective, you've come to the right place.
Yes, indeed, you have. Hello, gang. Welcome in to Talking Technology with VI Labs, episode number 88 for the 1st of July 2025. We're in July already. A whole new month begins. Hope you're keeping well. Hope you had a good weekend and are ready to join us for the next hour or so of Talking Technology with VI Labs. We've got a great show coming up for you over the next hour or so. We're going to be catching up with the new head of technology at Vision Ireland. Yes, he's got a new title. Sean Doran, our new head of technology, will be joining us in a bit to chat all about the new European Accessibility Act that took effect on Saturday. So we'll be chatting a little bit about that. And Sean will also be joined alongside Andrew Power. Andrew Power hasn't been on the podcast before, but Andy is, interestingly, he used to be my boss. Andy works for Vision Ireland's sister company, Vially. He is their head of sales, and he will be telling us how companies are responding to the European Accessibility Act, and do companies actually want to make their stuff accessible? We'll be talking to Sean and Andy in just a little bit. And we will also have tech news with Daniel coming up later on, and lots of your views as well. So loads to come over the next hour or so. So please do stick with us. And hey, a reminder that if you would like to join the conversation, we always do love it when people get involved with Talking Technology. And of course, as always, there are loads of ways that you can do so. If you would like to join the conversation, as I say, there are loads of ways that you can get in touch with us. You can send us a WhatsApp voice note if you'd like. The way to do that is to use 086 199 0011. That's 086 199 0011. Remember, a voice note is not a call. You want to use the voice message button. It's labelled with voiceover, and you'll find it at the bottom corner of your WhatsApp chat screen, the bottom right hand corner there of the WhatsApp chat screen. Or if you would prefer to get in touch with us the old fashioned way, you can do that too. You can send us an email to content@vi.ie. That will reach us, and we will be delighted to share your views, whether it is on gaming, whether it is on technology, whether it's on anything related to technology, a new piece of tech you tried, or something you heard in the news. We'd love to hear from you. So 086 199 0011, or you can send us an email to content@vi.ie. But now, though, to catch up on some of the correspondence from the week gone by, I am joined from Kilkenny by Mr. Joe Lonigan. Joe, how are you?
Hi, David. I'm good, thank you. How are you keeping?
Not too bad at all, Joe. How was your weekend?
Yeah, weekend was quiet, but the weather was okay, so I got the dogs out a few times, and nice and relaxing. So all good.
Absolutely. And you weren't relaxing over in Glastonbury, Joe, which interestingly was audio described on the BBC this year. But you weren't over chilling and relaxing at Glastonbury. I think that's what happens at Glastonbury anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of chilling, all right. Lying on grass and getting drunk.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, but no, I wasn't there. I don't think Glastonbury would be my thing. Yeah, I'd probably enjoy one of the, I suppose the Irish ones better. I think maybe Electric Picnic might be on my agenda was sometime down the line. There has been other, I suppose, outdoor venues that have been attempted to be made accessible in the past. Altogether now is one of the famous ones. They said it was supposed to be 100% accessible for disabilities, but unfortunately it rained at one of those events, those outdoor festivals, and when it rains in Ireland, sometimes it buckets down, and
it sure
it's got filthy, muddy, and suddenly wheelchairs and others are finding it very difficult to navigate. They did. That was 2023, I think. They did come back the year after and make a lot of improvements. Now, I didn't get any feedback from any blind or disabled people to let me know if the improvements worked out. But I'd love to hear from people. Have they ever attended a music festival? Did they find it accessible? Were people helpful? Could you get around? Really? Is it practical to go to one?
Yeah, absolutely. Even things like, the electric picnic and stuff like that, because it's such a cultural part for people, say, even growing up. I never actually went to one, but so many people do, and there's events where you could have 250,000 people going. That's crazy. And it will be a shame for visually impaired or people who are blind or have other disabilities to be missing out on stuff like that because it's inaccessible. So hopefully these things only get bigger and better, for sure. But anyway, outside of that, we did have some correspondence in recent weeks. One of those was from Derry Lawler. Derry was following up on a segment we had in our Tech on Tap newsletter about accessible gaming and improvements that are coming to Steam.
Hi, David and Joe. Hope you're keeping well. It's Derry here again. I noticed last week you put in the magazine, in the weekly email you send out, you were talking about the accessibility of games listed on Steam. But I bought one called Stardew Valley, and there's a mod for it. But I paid about, I'd say it was $17 or $18, I think, at the time. But it's an incredibly difficult website. Just a matter of interest, have you managed to actually buy and download the game successfully? Trying to find it is impossible, and download and install it is extremely impossible. Just wondering, have you tried doing that yourself?
Short answer is no, Derry, from me anyway. And Joe, yourself?
No, I don't use Steam Deck or I had a look on the website, steampower.com. The website itself seems fairly accessible, all right, and has headings and links, and seems to be very readable with JAWS, but that kind of gaming is not my thing, I suppose. Maybe there might be other, maybe social areas that they get involved in. Able gamers might be able to help them out, or there might be a mailing list out there that some people might be using the Steam platform. But personally, I haven't used it yet at all. You haven't used it yet, David?
No, I do kind of, at some stage I would like to. They announced, interestingly enough, after we did that, I was kind of raging actually. I wrote that original piece from the press release that Steam sent. Basically, they're implementing a feature, I think we covered it in Talking Technology too, where you can now basically filter different games by their accessibility features, and I was like, that's really cool, but it wouldn't be worth it to me on something like a Steam Deck or even on PC gaming, if I didn't have full screen reader access and stuff like that. So it is something I'd like to try in the future. Steam seem to be improving the accessibility, but the gaming industry has been notoriously slow to catch up with this kind of thing. So I think it's going to take time, and I don't know when it was that you were trying to download Stardew Valley, Derry. So maybe things have improved a little bit now, but it is a complicated process. Steam is basically like an app store, but then there's also a launcher that you have to put on the computer for it to work all properly and stuff like that. So it's a bit involved, but I think it's one of these things that it is only going to get better. And as it gets better, there'll be, it's one of these things that will go in a cycle, as more people with disabilities start playing games, we're going to start seeing more games become accessible. And from there, you would hope that it would spiral,
Yeah, you would hope, but sometimes it's difficult to get something that's in the minority to spiral. But yeah, I know that PlayStation has a few games there that are accessible. I think The Last of Us is one of the famous ones, the more recent famous ones, and it's supposed to be almost 100% accessible. But they're kind of story, there is a bit of gruesome stuff in it and all the rest of it. They're kind of story, role play along games, you go through. So it's, look, I think there is some games out there that can be made accessible, and there's others that just so difficult, you know what I mean?
I still think you can find ways of making most games accessible. I think, what needs to happen is right now, as you say, like it's only a handful of games. Like I'm not going to buy a PlayStation or any other console just to play a game like The Last of Us, or I think Uncharted was another one. I'm not going to buy a device that only lets me play, a handful of games. It will be like buying a phone that only supported, like a handful of different apps. It kind of defeats the purpose of the device. But as we start seeing more and more, that's when I think this stuff could really take off. And it is a whole new market. Like, look at what accessibility did for the iPhone. It is a minority, as you say, but it's a big number too in the scheme of things. Like, it does shift a dial, I think. So
yeah, well, that's a good point, I suppose. What VoiceOver did for the iPhone, yeah, of course, that, and all the apps on the App Store, well, not all of them, a lot of them on the App Store are very accessible. So, yeah, I agree with you there. Look, you can get a chain reaction from stuff, but yeah, well, let's wait and see.
Absolutely. Let's wait and see indeed. And thank you, Derry, for that voice note. Hopefully we will see gaming and indeed the places where we go to get games get more accessible in the future. That would be great to see. Your thoughts on that or anything related or unrelated, we'd love to get them. You can send us a message on WhatsApp 086 199 0011, or you can send us an email to content@vi.ie. Now, moving on Saturday, the European Accessibility Act took effect. This is new legislation that requires certain industries that are selling products or operating services in the EU to be accessible. There are categories here: banking, ebook readers, audiovisual services. So those are like your TV and streaming services, which is really exciting for me. I'm really excited about that. Ticket machines and lots of other devices. They are now legally required to be accessible for the first time, whether they are in the public sector or the private sector. So, Joe, this is a really big deal, isn't it?
Oh, David, yeah, it is a big deal. Yeah, what difference will it make? Now, that time will tell. I think with the government organisation, government areas definitely will play ball with it straight away. Hopefully the developers of everything else will also play ball with it and get their standards up to accessibility. But then maybe one or two might need to get punished. Maybe if there is a very popular, I suppose, website out there that's not accessible, maybe they need to be brought under the act and reprimanded, to get in line. Then the others will see that, look, Jeannie Mac, if we're not in line with this act, we might get punished as well. So everybody will have to get their house in order. But that's probably the plan. I suppose if you don't bring in a legislation for something and things aren't working, it'll never be working. So this is a starting point of getting the whole system working for everybody, So that's where I see it.
It's an interesting one. I think it is going to be, it is going to take time. It is going to take the regulators to actually do stuff. I mean, we need them to get on board and actually, do the regulating, as is their job. But hopefully that will happen in time. But hey, let's chat a little bit more about this now with Sean Doran and Andrew Power. Sean, the head of technology at Vision Ireland, and Andrew Power, the head of sales at Vially. Here's what happened when I caught up with Sean and Andy last week, starting with the conversation I had with Sean. And now on Talking Technology, I am delighted to be joined by a voice who's no stranger to Talking Technology, although he hasn't been around in a while. And he has got a brand new title as well since we last spoke to him. I'm delighted to be joined by the recently appointed new head of technology at Vision Ireland, Mr. Sean Doran. Sean, how are you?
Very well, David. Thanks very much. It has been a long time since I've been on the podcast, and I'm delighted to be back on.
I think it was like WWDC like 2 years ago.
It's been that long. That's amazing.
It sure has. But head of technology now.
Yeah, it's definitely a change, and it's great that, obviously we've been all working hard in Vision Ireland trying to get, technology, been people more aware of either mainstream technology or bespoke and where they both meet. And it's, it's an ongoing process, and technology's not going to rest, and we can't either.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, congratulations. But thank you anyway for joining us. And I suppose the reason you're here to chat today isn't just a new role. It is mainly the European Accessibility Act, which came into effect on Saturday. But there's been quite a lot of lead-in time for this. So for those who don't know about the European Accessibility Act, do you mind giving us just a brief kind of run through? What exactly is it?
Yeah, it's a harmonisation of a lot of kind of thoughts, and obviously previous policies. It might have been in the public sector only. Now we're going public and private, and it's basically legislation stating that websites, mobile apps, ATMs, ticket machines, ebooks, online shopping and banking are all digitally accessible to people with all disabilities. Obviously, Vision Ireland are focusing on, blind and visually impaired, but when we set up at the likes of IA Labs, which is now Vially, that was to help all disabilities and get that word out there on all disabilities to make all those websites and platforms accessible to all. And it's just so important that legislation like this has been taken seriously, because you're a screen reader user, David, you use magnification also. There's lots of websites and applications that you just couldn't use in the past.
Yeah, I think everyone who's blind or visually impaired will have come across, whether it's an unlabeled button in an app or anything like that, and that can be a determining factor in whether you're able to use that app. But what's great now is as the European Accessibility Act takes effect on the 28th of June, so Saturday just gone, there are quite severe sanctions as well for companies who don't make their apps accessible, certainly in certain categories like banking, as you said.
Absolutely. And there's going to be fines that can be put towards organizations and companies and platforms, etc. And the complexity of and maybe the benefit of the European Accessibility Act is, if an organization or a platform is not accessible and you go to sue them in Ireland as a member state, each member state can also sue them. So a company could be litigated in many different countries, and it's a big deterrent. Nobody wants to go through that much legal processes and everything else. So if you make your product accessible, you won't have to go through things like this. But there are going to be fines. It's yet to be seen how that is action. There's lots of different monitoring bodies in the different sectors, and it's exciting to see how that will take place. But we want to look at the positive end of the European Accessibility Act of, we'd rather look at the carrot and the stick. It's the absolute right thing to do to make products accessible, because everyone needs to access these pieces of information or these services. And there's also a stick now to, technically, to your point, David, maybe beat people up if they're not accessible. But I'd like to focus on the carrot. And one of them carrots is that, people with disabilities want to access services. We want to buy things online. We want to do what everyone else does. And it's a demographic that might not have been explored before. And if people have access to spending online, like, large e-commerce websites, if they felt that, or they knew that 30% of the market wasn't accessible to them because their website wasn't accessible, they'd move quickly to fix that, to get more people spending online with them.
Yeah.
So there's lots of positives and lots of carrots to go with the European Accessibility Act, but absolutely, to your point, there can be, ramifications for not being compliant.
One of the most interesting ones, you mentioned some of those ramifications. I was reading, there was a piece in RTE News over the weekend featuring Brian Dalton. And one of the interesting notes from that article was that senior members of staff in these companies can actually be imprisoned, which is fascinating. Imagine being imprisoned because you never labeled a button for voiceover users. It's kind of Entertaining in some ways, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, when you say it like that, it does sound very, very entertaining and kind of, shocking. But what that means is, like, you would have to have lots of evidence that someone who would be at the top of an organization knows that they're non-compliant and has actively ignored it or actively worked against trying to become compliant.
Yeah.
So someone's not going to be thrown in jail because a button isn't labeled. If they're totally unaware or they're working towards getting that fixed, then it's on a roadmap. But if there is information or proof that someone has actively went against this legislation, there's potential that that person could do time. And like I said, it does sound outlandish, but it's a good deterrent.
It sure is. I do want to bring in Andy Power here. Andy is head of sales at Vision Ireland's sister company, Vially. Vially is wholly owned by Vision Ireland. And Andy, incidentally, used to be my boss. So, Andy, how are things with your good self?
Hi, David. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So, Andy, the European Accessibility Act, it's now in effect, but you guys have been working on this for the last little while. You've been working on this for the last number of years. So you guys do accessibility consultancy. You work with websites, apps, companies to ensure their stuff is accessible. What's the response been to the European Accessibility Act?
It's been a mixed bag, I would say. There are some organizations out there who have taken it very seriously and, have stood up enormous projects over the course of years and poured resources and time into making their digital experiences more accessible. I think it's fair to call out the banks as being the ones who are probably leading the charge with this in Ireland. They really genuinely have been very engaged, both with us and I think with the community and their customer base, and trying to make sure that they're not just complying with the Act, but actually delivering inclusive and accessible experiences, which is great. And then, unfortunately, on the other side of that, you do have a lot of organizations who are literally looking for any loophole or excuse they can find not to do it, right?
Yeah.
And there is another large set of financial institutions in Ireland that are doing that, and it's very disappointing to see. But I think there's an education piece in this that we've had. Anyone that we speak to, as we develop their understanding of what accessibility means and how it impacts people, everyone we've worked with has turned around and said, "Oh, we see the value of this. We want to do it." But there are those other organizations that just seem to just want to bury their head in the sand or find any way that they can just to shirk responsibility. And again, I think it's very disappointing, but I think the Act is now in force and the regulators will be coming knocking on people's doors. And I think they'll realize very quickly that the loopholes that they thought they had don't exist. And they're going to be in a difficult position.
Have the regulators been good to engage with? Have they inspired confidence so far? Do you think things are promising down the road for the actual implementation of the Act?
Yeah, I think the regulators have all been fairly circumspect about it. Insofar as they have a job to do, they have a methodology of approaching things. They have, I suppose, legal and regulatory guidelines that they need to follow. So they've all been quite sort of, played their cards fairly close to their chest, I think, on this one, which is fair enough. But now that the Act is in force, I think we'll really see how they're going to approach it. We have a model for it from the NDA, who've done amazing work over the last number of years in the public sector, supporting organizations and also, I suppose, driving that along by, calling people out on accessibility issues where they find them, but also supporting. So hopefully that will be the way it goes. But I think the interesting thing about the European Accessibility Act, and we've actually already seen it. So there's an article in RTE last week about this, and a large retailer that we've been working with said that they already had people in touch with them asking them if they're doing this, if they're complying, if they're on board with it. So I think the floodgates will open, and there's a lot of people out there who have had bad experiences with organizations who are ready to lead the charge, and I think the regulators will need to respond to that fairly quickly. Unfortunately, as I say, there's a lot of organizations that seem to want to do this, and there's a lot that seem to want to do everything they can to avoid the effort, I think, which is disappointing.
Sean, same question to yourself.
Obviously, some organizations take it in a pragmatic sense, and it's like GDPR. Lots of new legislation comes in. What do they have to do to prepare? What do they have to understand? And maybe a few years ago, accessibility seemed like digital accessibility might have seemed like a niche concept, and many people didn't understand how to implement it or scale it. So obviously, Vision Ireland, like we're doing this for 90 years, we have a lot of information and learnings, and we created IA Labs and Vially to help educate those sectors and those companies to become more compliant. And we've seen a massive influx of people contacting us. And like you're saying there, like especially in the financial sector and kind of service delivery sectors, even aviation, these large organizations deliver services all the time. It's within their remit to be compliant, to best deliver their service. So they have definitely moved in the right direction. And what they were road mapping in the past, they're actively doing now. Now, it still will take a while before all that filters through to every product and every service.
Yeah,
we've definitely seen an uptake, and we've already begun to see improvements. And sometimes those improvements are so incremental, it doesn't have that big bang effect, but things are becoming more accessible online. I'm sure you've probably seen that yourself. Even in the last 2 years, apps have become slightly more intuitive, have become slightly better labeled, and screen readers can get around them more easily. Now, it's still not perfect, but there's definitely been a sea change, and that's going to rise even more in the next few months and years.
Absolutely, and hopefully long may it continue. It's really interesting. So I suppose for now, where we're at is, as you said earlier on, there are a few different regulators that will be keeping an eye on accessibility. So we have the likes of the Central Bank, the CCPC, the Consumer Protection Commission, Comreg, and Commission Iman there, the Media Commission there. So they're all kind of regulating their individual sectors. So there isn't one specific regulator for this, and each one of those will do things in a slightly different way. But what's great is there is now somewhere to go. And of course, you can always come to Vision Ireland, but it's great that there is somewhere official that will be able to regulate these services as well. And that's quite important too.
Absolutely. Like we said, standardization and harmonization and just approaches to these legislations are so important. And there will be teething problems. There will be, who do we go to at first? But within a few months and weeks, that all gets leveled out. And it's just such a positive thing. And looking at things like the European Accessibility Act from a global point of view, like I was in a few conferences in the States recently, and there's obviously thoughts in the States maybe pulling away from DEI and, maybe not being so attentive towards the American Disability Act, etc., which is a big player in this space as the EAA now is. But because the European market is so large and all organizations want to sell into the EU and deliver services into the EU, that the rest of the world are still on track to staying compliant and becoming more compliant. So overall, like all these monitoring bodies, all these laws around the world, it's all going in the right direction. And the European Accessibility Act is going to be a major beacon and lighthouse for staying true to the course of being digitally accessible. So I can only see good things coming from this.
Yeah, it's an interesting one to see for sure, and time will absolutely tell how it goes. For those companies that may want to do stuff, or there's going to be a lot of people listening to this who may encounter accessibility issues on websites and things like that. Is there a way that they can get in touch with Vially to flag concerns or get support if they need it? What are the best ways to get in touch with you guys?
So you can email us at hello@vially.io. You can get me at andrew@vially.io. And they're welcome to give us a call. Our numbers and details are all on the website. Again, it's up to the organization that they're looking at to make these changes. And one of the things that the European Accessibility Act provides for is that, it requires actually is that every website should have an accessibility statement on it. And that accessibility statement should include a way for people to contact that organization if they have issues or challenges. So first port of call, if you have a problem, go look there. Feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to kind of offer advice or help. I mean, we're not really there's only something we can do if that company wants to engage with us and seek our help. But I think, for the individual on the street, if they're having challenges, first port of call is if they don't have that accessibility statement. That's usually a fair indicator that they're just not doing anything about this.
Good to know. Thanks for that, Andy, and continued best of luck with all that you and the team are doing over there at Vially. Sean, I do want to ask you, as we mentioned earlier, you're now the head of technology for Vision Ireland. What exciting things are coming down the road for technology at Vision Ireland? Can you give us any sneak peeks?
I know we spoke in the past of Vision Ireland. We won the AWS Imagine grant, so we're starting to build that generative AI piece of technology, and we want to expand on the uploading of images, moving into video, live video as the technology progresses. So by the end of the year, we'll have an app where we can upload images and use AI for that. In 2 or 3 years, we'll have live video, and we're working towards creating that, somewhere between a digital guide dog for helping us maybe navigate small internal journeys, and then a personal assistant that can describe things that's happening to us in real time and inform us things in real time. And something just as basic as if we walk into a room, I have sight, so I can see where seats are. You might walk into a room, David, not sure if there's a seat in front of you.
Yeah, it's a digital restaurant, yeah.
The first thing a digital assistant could do would be inform you that, there's spare seats to the left, there's a table to the right. We can build guardrails and RAG models around AI from our knowledge and what we expect. And the term digital guide dog is a loose term that we sort of been thrown around Vision Ireland. But no, working towards a full AI assistant that can help us with all, different needs within technology. So we're doing a lot of work with AWS in that space. Lots of people are interested, and it's fascinating. It seems like a brave new world. It seems this is very futuristic, and to some people it seems, oh, that's trivial, I wouldn't use that, and other people it seems very important. So we're breaking new ground with this, as many other organizations are around the world, and how to use AI in a positive manner, because there's all this negativity around AI where it's, wow, you'd hear people in mainstream circles going, oh, I could lose my job as a creative. I could, not be able to do this because my job will be replaced by AI. But when we go to disability conferences and look at AI from that perspective, it's, wow, this is the first time someone who's blind and visually impaired can create a logo for their website. This is the first time someone can generate images that will go along with their blog. And it's such a positive thing that they're the areas we want to explore around AI. And so Vision Ireland are kind of really looking at this, looking at all technology as it emerges, because some will be good, some will be bad, but we have to look into it and test it and see what benefits comes from those technologies.
Super stuff. Sean, for now, thank you so much for joining us on Talking Technology. A reminder for people, if you do want to get in touch with us at any time to share your views, thoughts, anything like that on what we're doing in Vision Ireland, our content, anything like that at all, you can send us an email. The email you need, it's content@vi.ie, or you can send us a WhatsApp voice note, 086 199 0011. But now let's move swiftly on. It's time for the Nuacht.
This is Talking Technology News.
So, with your latest Talking Technology news, I'm Daniel Dunn. Bank of Ireland has rolled out a number of new accessibility improvements to coincide with the European Accessibility Act taking effect. They have also looked forward to a number of improvements coming down the line, including improvements to the bank's mobile apps. The company has rewritten a lot of its communications for customers to make them more accessible and easier to follow. The updated communications span a wide range of banking services and products, including current accounts, loans, mortgages, and credit cards. Each item, including letters, website content, and brochures, has been reviewed and rewritten to be shorter, clearer, and jargon-free, with a target reading age of 16 or below. A rollout of 650 new talking ATMs will be complete by the end of 2027, and customers who are deaf or hard of hearing will be able to engage with the bank through sign language without needing to book an interpreter in advance. Anya McCleary, Chief Customer Officer at the Bank of Ireland, said, "We fully support the mission of the European Accessibility Act by making our services and communications more inclusive. We're helping to remove barriers and empower every customer to manage their finances. These enhancements will make banking more accessible for everyone, and Bank of Ireland remains committed to listening, learning, and continuously improving." Chris White, CEO of Vision Ireland, also welcomed the move, saying, "Vision Ireland is pleased to be part of the user testing of Bank of Ireland's new ATMs. We have engaged with individuals who have a range of disabilities, and we found Bank of Ireland's ATMs to be among the most accessible we've encountered. Features such as clear audio guidance, tactile keypads, consistent interface layout, and high contrast screens significantly enhance usability. Our testers reported a high level of confidence and independence when using these machines. Hopefully, this is the start of continuous improvement for Bank of Ireland, and in time, other banks and services will follow." In other news, the Berlin Commissioner for Data Protection has formally requested Google and Apple to remove the Deepseek AI app from the App Store and Google Play Store. Deepseek is kind of like ChatGPT, except it is owned and operated by a Chinese company. The German regulator is concerned that users of the Deepseek app in Europe could have their data transferred to servers in China for processing. This will be against the General Data Protection Regulation. Removing Deepseek from the App Store would definitely reduce usage. However, it's not clear how this move could impact third-party apps that are using technology from Deepseek in their apps through an API. Countries being concerned about user data is nothing new, with America requesting that apps such as TikTok be removed from their app stores earlier this year. Google and Apple will now have to review the Commissioner's report and decide whether Deepseek AI will be removed from their stores or not. The move from the regulator is independent of the German government. Are you concerned with where your data moves online? Let us know with a WhatsApp voice note. And finally, for now, a new version of the Meta glasses looks to be underway. While we are still eagerly waiting for some of the AI features to launch officially in Ireland, Meta is set to launch a new style of glasses in partnership with Oakley. While some of the glasses from the range are limited editions, they will contain better battery life of up to 8 hours, a higher resolution camera, and the same AI features seen on the Meta Ray-Ban glasses. Ireland is on the list of launch countries, with the products set to go on sale from the 11th of July. The list of launch countries include the US, Canada, UK, Ireland, France, Italy, Spain, Austria, Belgium, Australia, Germany, Sweden, Norway, Finland, and Denmark. Meta also revealed that the glasses have now got millions of users, which is very promising for the future. Hopefully, accessibility of the range will continue to improve, and we get official support for Meta's AI visual features in Ireland soon. But that's it for now. If you're looking for technology content from VI Labs, why not subscribe to the VI Labs YouTube channel? Just search VI Labs Accessibility on YouTube. For now, though, it's back to you, David.
Daniel, I gotta hand it to you. That was superb country listing right there. Do you know, they always taught us when we were in college doing media stuff to never read a list. But I must say, Daniel, you read a list and you read it with pizzazz, sir. How did you get on with that?
Thanks very much, David. Yeah, just took a deep breath and went for it.
Absolutely. There you go. So new versions of the Meta glasses on the way with Oakley now. I think Oakley, they're kind of a more sporty brand, I think, than the Ray-Bans, I believe. But yeah, exciting stuff. Better battery life, better cameras. Joe, this is promising.
Yeah, it is promising another, I suppose, competitor come into the market. So, like, I know Oakley, they're fairly famous for some famous golfers wear them. Bubba Watson used to be a famous golfer that wore Oakley, and there's a lot more out there. But yeah, so to see him come into the smart glasses game, it's excellent, and I think they're roughly around the €500 mark. This is obviously a limited edition version, but to see them come in at all then means they may. This is they're testing the water, and because they've sold millions of the Ray-Bans, I think, look, Oakley could be, they want a piece of that cake as well, you know. And I think, look, if they're coming in making improvements like longer battery life, better cameras, all that kind of stuff, I think that can only be a good thing.
I'd love to know, like, how much of it is Meta versus how much of it is Oakley. Like, you'd wonder, like, you know, is it just the same device in a slightly different shell, or are they making actual, like, serious improvements on their own, or, you know, how that's all going to work. But it is definitely an interesting one to see, and I'm sure that there are lots of people that will be very, very happy with that. Deepseek also being banned, or not necessarily banned, but certainly being removed from app stores in Germany. This is a possibility following a regulator making a decision in Berlin. But Daniel, you know, do people need to be concerned about where their data is going online?
Yeah, like, that's, you know, the most important thing about the internet is when something goes out there, it kind of stays out there. It's very hard to get your data back if it's ever been leaked. You know, so it is definitely a concern where our data is being stored. Is it secure? You know, if it gets into the wrong hands, how is it going to be used against us? So yeah, anything that pops up around data storage, data security, I definitely want to be, you know, keeping attention on it anyway. You know, and like when you're signing up for apps and all that, you know, do you actually trust the company that has produced the app? Do you fully trust that they're securing your data securely? Are they outsourcing that to a third-party company to source your data? So there's lots of, you know, if you are very concerned about your data, you know, there's lots of places where it can go, where it can end up. And yeah, so, like, you know, under the GDPR Act that was mentioned there in the news, this is where Germany seems to be finding fault with Deepseek. You know, so it's like there's a very strong kind of guideline in Europe that if it's data on European citizens, it's got to stay inside the EU. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this one goes, you know.
It really will. And Joe, we've had a conversation on Talking Technology before about how, I suppose, you know, especially I think blind and visually impaired people, we tend to use AI at times for very personal things because it's such a benefit to us. And, you know, it can be the only way to fully access a bank statement or whatever the case may be. So is this of increased concern for visually impaired or blind people, do you think?
I think, yeah, because you know what, you never know what's under the bonnet 100%, you know, in some of these AI apps that we use. Some of them will be using a mix of DeepSeek and ChatGPT and Gemini and some other thing maybe. But, I mean, if you don't know what's under the bonnet, you don't know where your data is going, you know, and then, as Daniel said, you can't get it back, you know, and then down the line, you're using all these algorithms of TikTok and Facebook and whatever other social medias and stuff, and you're clicking on cookies, and all these algorithms are changing the way people think. You know what I mean? They're putting ideas in people's heads and steering them towards certain ideas, or whatever they might be. But that's the issue as well. And then trying to sell you advertisements as well. That's the other thing, ruining people's enjoyment of using the internet because there's too many ads on it. And these are all contributing to these things, and people don't realise it. Your data is your currency that you're giving to them, so that you can kind of use their services. But in return, they're knocking the head off you going down the line by advertising stuff and changing your algorithms and whatever else.
Well, it is. You make an interesting point. Like let's say I scan and this is a purely hypothetical, scenario. But like let's say I use an AI image descriptions app to scan my bill from a certain supermarket, or I scan my statement from the Bank of Cork, and then all of a sudden I get a message and start receiving ads from the Bank of Limerick because they decided, we know all of David's data. We just bought that off the AI company. It's fascinating how deep this can run. So it is something I think to be aware of. And I think hopefully we just need to keep an eye on the security of all of these tech companies, and probably for the first time, even assistive technology companies, because they're using and having partnerships for the first time with these massive companies. If you look at it, Be My Eyes partnering with OpenAI and Google, Ira partnering with Google also. All of these companies, they're partnering with bigger companies. And it is something that we just need to be careful of as time goes on, because they're all doing it.
Exactly. You just don't know. They have, and if you did read the policies, you would probably see in little places that they are going to hold on to your data for a little while. And interesting thing is that the Bank of Cork, is that some sort of dodgy bank you have down there, David?
We don't talk about. I shouldn't even have mentioned it outside of the People's Republic of Cork, Joe. It's not meant to be publicly known, but we keep that as secret to ourselves.
Okay, scratch that, delete that.
Yeah, we'll fix that. Moving on. Anyway, the other story that we had there, speaking of banks, Bank of Ireland, which seemingly a lot more legitimate than the Bank of Cork, apparently. But they are making some serious accessibility improvements. This is great news to see, Joe.
This is great. I didn't really actually know about that till Daniel read that about the bank machines, talking bank machines with screen readers in them almost, so that will be brilliant. It'll bring a whole new level of independence to people that like to use bank machines. I think they've been trialling that the last 20 years, to be honest, and haven't been getting very far. I don't know what's really stopping it. Is it the fact that people are uncomfortable using it, or is it people don't want to be plugging in headphones? And then again, are headphones even going out of fashion? Do you know what I mean? Them 3.5-inch headphones. What solution will they have? Would you be able to Bluetooth your phone to it when you go up close to it, or something, so it'll automatically know it's you, and then you might be listen to it? It's a tricky one, and I'm hoping it does work out as being accessible. Their target is, I think you said 2027. I'm looking forward to seeing what they have in mind.
Yeah, over 600 ATMs by the end of 2027, talking ATMs. The way they work for the Bank of Ireland ones, you will be able to, like you say, Joe, connect a pair of headphones to them. And they do apparently have tactile keypads and stuff like that there, according to the press release from Bank of Ireland. You can find the full details of that on the Bank of Ireland website, but there's a lot of really interesting stuff in there. I think for those who are deaf and hard of hearing, the fact that you can get on-demand sign language interpreting, that's huge. Like that takes resources. That's brilliant. And I think, in what's delayed this and taken it so long it's money as well as part of it. And, you know, the bank has all the money, but not all the money is theirs to spend. And I think now is a case where they actually have to spend money because of things like the European Accessibility Act. So very promising stuff. I think the future is definitely looking bright, Joe.
Yeah, definitely looking bright if those kind of things do follow through and it's not all talk. I'm looking forward to using a bank machine on my own. I tend to go into shops now and get cash back at the desk, but that's not always practical. And some shops don't give cash back, and usually it's a limit of 70 to 100 euros. So, yeah, having access to a bank machine, maybe before you go on holidays or whatever, it's always good to have some cash with you, you know?
Yeah. Did you ever, incidentally, Joe, Daniel, I'll come to you in one sec, sorry. Incidentally, Joe, did you ever use the return machines?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, quite a disaster, an accessibility disaster, in my opinion. First of all, the hole where you put the bottles. I hope you're talking about these return bottle machines.
Yeah.
The hole at the top is too high for someone in a wheelchair, in a lot of cases. And then for someone that's blind, there is no speech feedback, and you get your receipt. You know, you're supposed to be able to see. You should be able to get the message that there's whatever 100 bottles after going in and €15 back or whatever. But like, how are you supposed to know that? You know what I mean? Or if a bottle gets rejected, it just keeps spinning around the thing, and you have to put your hand in, and you know you don't always know them things are safe. And there's also that hygiene thing going on, where they're not that clean either. I think, you know. Yeah. Look, don't get me started on those machines, David.
Yeah, it's such a dose because they could have been so much more accessible. And, you know, it really just, it shows that we do need to get these companies thinking about accessibility before they actually install the things, because it's much easier to make something accessible from the start rather than try to remediate it.
Yes, big time.
There's definitely stuff they could do there. Daniel, I interrupted you earlier, sorry.
Yeah, it's just about the ATMs. You know, it is very exciting to see this being rolled out, and like 650 locations. So I think that far surpasses the amount of branches Bank of Ireland have around the country. So it probably means that you know, some supermarkets might have a Bank of Ireland ATM inside their stores, and you know, that to me sounds like some of those supermarkets are going to get them as well. So it sounds like it could be a good spread of them right out across the country.
That sounds
which is great to see, you know, because when you hear announcements like this, you'd imagine from the outset, it's only going to be the ATMs at the bank branches, and like so many of those have been closed down and removed over the last few years that we really don't have that many bank branches around. From, you know, I suppose when you look at one company, they don't have that many bank branches in, you know, in smaller towns and rural areas in particular. So it means that there's going to be a better spread around the country, I think.
But you know what is great as well? And like, you know, I think Bank of Ireland have proved this, that if they share the information and do shout about accessibility improvements, because then people hear about it. You know, like we could easily be talking about AIB or PTSB or EBS or any of those now, but and we would do it. Just share the information. Tell us what you're doing to improve accessibility, because that's how, like, for people to actually use these services, we need to know they exist. So
exactly, yeah. And like, if it's kind of the feedback. You know, if you need to get feedback, and you need to let people know this stuff is available, you know, and then more people will use it. It'll inspire them to continue on making accessibility better and better, which in turn brings more people to use it. But I suppose it's getting the word out initially.
Yeah.
That's the challenge. And, you know, I suppose, like, if we hear of other banks and all that doing it, like, we'll try and hit on it and broadcast it, but sometimes you don't get to hear about it, you know. So, you know, if anybody's listening to work for a PR firm for any of these big companies, you know, and they have exciting accessibility projects going on, it's, you know,
do tell
great
us.
to hear about, and let us know, and we'll broadcast it too.
Yeah, and tell the world, about accessibility and what you're doing, because it does definitely help for sure. But Daniel, Joe, thank you so much for now, for the news, for the commentary on the European Accessibility Act. And thank you for joining us as always. And that goes to you too. Thank you so much for joining us for episode number 88 of Talking Technology with VI Labs. That's about our lot for this episode. But we will be back in 2 weeks' time for another episode. So, hey, if you do want to, you've enjoyed what you've heard, and you want to get more, you can subscribe to VI Labs over on YouTube, or you can subscribe to our podcast feed by using any of your podcast app of choice. You can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of them there. We're absolutely everywhere we are. So do be sure to subscribe. You can also catch up with our Tech on Tap newsletter. Full details of that can be found on our website, vi.ie, where you can also find details of our upcoming training courses. We've got a whole load of courses coming up over the next couple of months. So just go to the upcoming events section, and we would love to have you along. Absolutely love to have you along. So for now, though, that is about our lot. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time for another episode of Talking Technology. But for now, stay safe and have a good week.
Thanks for listening to the Talking Technology podcast with VI Labs. If you'd like to support our show, please visit vi.ie/donate. Talking Technology is proudly sponsored by IA Labs, the market leader in digital accessibility services. IA Labs, digital inclusion, your legal obligation.